Hi everyone and welcome to Bonnie Astrology. Today we're discussing the full moon in Capricorn happening on the 21st of July 2024 and what it means for your zodiac sign. As always, if you do enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you like this kind of content, subscribe to the channel for regular astrology updates from me. This full moon is going to be exceptionally significant. It is not only a full moon, but in an astrological sense, it is a blue moon, meaning that it is happening for the second time in the sign of Capricorn. Now, a typical blue moon is when a full moon occurs twice in one calendar month, but this is an astrological blue moon, meaning that the energy of that particular sign is repeating, and therefore it is more important in our lives, and that house takes center stage. Now, the last full moon that we had in the sign of Capricorn was happening around the solstice, 20th, 21st, 22nd of June. The events that may have been transpiring in your life around the time of that full moon may be repeating in some sense at the time of this one. So you may notice in the few days before the full moon and the few days after that there are significant events happening in your Capricorn house. Now, I'm going to get into what this means for each of the individual zodiac signs in the horoscopes portion. I am going to go into beforehand what it means for all of us collectively. If you want to click ahead to your zodiac sign, you're absolutely fine to do so. The timestamps are listed below. As always, I do suggest that you watch your ascendant sign first, or you can also watch your sun sign. And if you want, you can watch your moon. It's really up to you. But usually from an astrological events perspective, the ascendant would be regarded as the most accurate. So I'm going to look at the astrology for this full moon, what is playing out at this time. As I mentioned, this is an astrological blue moon, which means that it is happening for the second time in the sign of Capricorn. Now, if you look to your Capricorn house, this may be an area of significance for you. And that significance does not end at this full moon, because this full moon is conjunct Pluto while Pluto is out of sign and in Aquarius. But Pluto will actually retrograde back over this degree. Now, you don't need to know the details of why that is, what that means from an astrological sense. You just simply need to understand the themes. So Pluto is going to be repeating the themes of this full moon over that time, particularly for those who have placements at 29 degrees of the cardinal sign. So you could have a placement at 29 degrees of Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, or Libra. You will be feeling this the most intensely. But basically this means that the themes that are playing out around this full moon are pivotal to the changes that we are making collectively and individually in our personal lives. So with this being at the final degree of Capricorn, and this being a crisis degree, an erratic degree, which basically means that it's a karmic degree. And that does not mean that it's simply good or bad. It simply means that it is meant to be. It is something that is happening on a fated perspective, and it is going to contribute to our growth and transformations, both collectively as the world and individually and personally. So the fact that this is happening at the crisis degree of Capricorn means that the themes that may be coming up are surrounding governments, structures, big institutions like banks, governments, hierarchies, those who have the power, in particular because of Pluto's link to this full moon and retrograding back into the sign of Capricorn. So this full moon can highlight issues surrounding those in positions of power, presidents, prime ministers, governments, political parties, and also, as I say, banks, big institutions with a lot of power and a lot of prestige can be affected by this full moon. And the interesting thing about 29 degrees of Capricorn is that we have had a lot of activity there since 2020. In 2020, Saturn went over this degree. In 2020, Jupiter went over this degree. And then over the last couple of years, Pluto has been connecting to this degree as well. So this full moon is really about wrapping up a cycle that has been going on for not only 2008, but has had significant prominence since 2020. There has been a series of events that has changed our perspectives and our understanding when it comes to governments, when it comes to those in positions of power. And Pluto is an energy of purging and reveal. It reveals the secrets. It reveals what's going on behind the scenes. And when Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, it corresponded with the financial crash, where a lot of secrets and background activities that were harmful actually came out publicly. And so we've been dealing with the repercussions of that ever since. And that energy, as it reaches 29 degrees, it only gets louder. So I want to go into that degree in the Sabian symbol sense, because we round up in degrees with the Sabian symbol. So this rounds up to 30 degrees of Capricorn. And this is the highest level of social influence. Small groups of those at the top making big decisions, secret meetings in leadership. So this is an interesting one. The exact phrase is a secret meeting of men responsible for executive decisions of world affairs, a secret business conference. So this is pretty on the nose. It is to do with people in positions of power meeting in secret. It can also be surrounding people in positions of power that we don't know about, shadowy figures. It can also be a chance to figure out who has the power in our own lives, who or what is running the show. And that is going to play out collectively as well. We're going to witness that. And obviously in the lead up to this full moon, we have had some crisis when it comes to leadership, such as the deterioration mentally of Joe Biden and then the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. There is a sense of crisis going on with lots of different leaderships. The UK elections changed from Tory to Labour governments. I believe there's a lot happening in France as well from a government perspective, and this full moon is emphasising that. And then, of course, Pluto going back over that degree from September to November is going to emphasise that even further, and just so happens to coincide with the US elections, which is also happening under a moon conjunct Pluto. Moons conjunct Pluto tend to bring a lot of heightened emotional intensity, and this full moon can do just that. So as I say, it's happening in the sign of Capricorn. That's authority, that's sovereignty. Collectively, that's leadership, those in positions of higher power, hierarchy, those with status. In our own life, it can be sovereignty, it can be career, it can be what we're doing for status, for our reputation, what we're known for, what we aspire to be, the way that we work. Capricorn is an energy associated with strong drive and ambition to be the best in our career, in our profession, to constantly be growing, to have a goal that we want to meet, to be aspiring to something, to becoming something, to getting power, to getting status, to building a reputation. And so this full moon can be a crisis in that area where perhaps we're rethinking our relationships to our careers, to our social status, to what we're putting out to the world, to what we're known for. Some may be seeking to transform and some may be seeking to make significant change. Now, the conjunction to Pluto is significant with this because Pluto brings transformation and Pluto brings change. So for a lot of people, perhaps this can be a case where there's a crisis when it comes to a job. This can be a crisis when it comes to career, where maybe you're feeling something is out of balance here. I'm always working, I'm never resting, I'm never having a social life. And for some people it is, I don't know if I'm going down the right path career-wise. I don't know if I'm looking for the right jobs. I don't know if this is sustainable. I don't know if this is something that I can do forever. And that theme may be repeating from, as I say, September to November, when Pluto is going through this crisis degree. And in the career perspective, this may apply particularly to Aries and Leo risings, as this full moon will be happening in career and work houses for them. So with the conjunction to Pluto, a lot of this is to do with changing of our structures. It's a bit of a tower moment. You know, in the tower card in tarot, where the tower is crumbling because it was not built on solid foundations. Capricorn is about foundations. So Pluto going over the anaretic degree is saying, let's, test this, see if it's sturdy. Let's test this and see if it's sturdy. And it's like a house of cards. It's all falling down. The conjunction to Pluto is interesting because Pluto at the time of this full moon is still in Aquarius, whereby the power in an astrological sense is shifting to the people, shifting to collective consciousness, shifting to our awareness as groups, as societies. As we've mentioned before in previous astrology videos, Pluto going through Aquarius is associated with revolution, whether that be the French Revolution or the American Revolution. It's where the people want to take back power because those at the top 1%, have too much. It's out of balance. There is a certain collective of individuals and it's quite small, but they have more power than the wider group of individuals, and Pluto in Aquarius seeks to change that. So I think for a lot of people, we're realizing that the structures don't work. 29 degrees of any sign is when we've kind of got to this point where it's peaked. It's been done. It has had its day. And that can really play out with as we're noticing, particularly in the US, political figures who are a lot older than they used to be and are perhaps in positions where they should be stepping down. So, for example, with President Biden, there's a lot of conversations about whether or not he should be stepping down and letting another Democratic nominee take the elections in November. And we can notice that come up quite a bit, where we're going to see, when Pluto goes back into Aquarius in November, a lot of younger individuals coming to the fore in governments. It's moving from those that are much older with Capricorn, because Capricorn rules the elders, to those who are much younger and perhaps even a little bit different than what we're used to with Aquarius. Aquarius is the outsider, the underdog. And we might also notice that in, for example, the royal family, where the current king is one of the oldest, if not actually maybe perhaps the oldest monarch to ever take the throne. So we're noticing these interesting parallels where we may be shifting towards abdications, stepping down from those who have had their day, so to speak. And that's not to take away the appreciation for knowledge and wisdom that elderly people possess. It's more to do with whether or not this is the direction we're going in. And with Pluto in Aquarius, it just does so happen to coincide with younger leaders. So we may notice with these different transits happening that we're more in favor of those who are younger and who have a different perspective and will do things differently, because at the end of the day, it's not about putting in new leaders and expecting different results. It's about how we change the systems and how we change the distribution of power. Because Capricorn is all about the structures. They need to change. The old systems are crumbling away when they don't work anymore. And we require systems that benefit us all rather than a select few. The interesting thing about Pluto being in the mix with this full moon is that when it comes to personal power and where we feel we have it or where we don't, we can really get an emotional and intuitive sense of where we're giving away our power, what has power over us, who has power over us, and how we can take that back. And with Pluto, a lot of the times, the way that we take back that power is by making change. But the power comes from within. It is choice. It is sovereignty, personal sovereignty. Capricorn is a sign of sovereignty. And it's opposite the sun in Cancer. Anytime we have a full moon, it means that the moon is opposite the sun. This is happening on the family and home and private axis versus the side of the axis versus the career, the public image, and the status, and how these two may be out of balance. So as I say before, you may notice if you're out of balance when it comes to all you do is work. Or it can be for some of you, all you do is stay at home. And you're trying to balance this personal and private life. And there may be a crisis or a turning point there where you realize, okay, I need to make changes in this area because I don't want to forego this area, or I've done too much of this and I need to balance it out with this. Oppositions are always a balancing act. So you might notice under this full moon that perhaps you're realizing that you need to make a change when it comes to career. And interestingly, you may be finding you're more reflective over that area in general because Saturn is, at the time of this full moon, retrograde. Saturn was not retrograde at the last full moon. So we may have had good intentions, we may have had good ideas, and now we're kind of reflecting on where we're going, where we need to make changes, what we need to let go of, what we need to purge with Pluto being in the mix. And that could very well be an emotional thing rather than a literal sense. But you may be finding with Saturn in retrograde, okay, well, what am I doing, particularly in the Pisces part of your chart, when it comes to maybe the spiritual component, when it comes to the sacrificial component, when it comes to belief in something bigger than you, with Saturn being in Pisces, and where maybe with Pisces being quite an escapist sign, where we're maybe trying to escape responsibility of something in our life, maybe where we're trying to escape something in general, maybe through fear, with Pluto being in the mix. But we can find with Saturn being retrograde as well, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to those in positions of authority, we don't know where they are because Saturn is not making any aspects at the time of this full moon. So it might be quite hard to know what exactly is changing, particularly with this degree happening at a very secretive Sabian symbol. It's hard to know exactly what's changing. A lot of the changes can be behind the scenes, but there will be something most likely up front going on as well. So your Capricorn part of your chart is absolutely dominating. And you may find that something, as much as we're witnessing this with leaders, you may find in your own life that something is in decline. You've gone as far as you can go. Are you going to do this forever? Are you going to pursue this dream forever, forsaking all else? Because 29 degrees full moon, kind of out of balance. And as I say, this is where the energy has reached its prime and now something needs to change. Something needs to be released. We need to wrap something up. We need to do things differently with Pluto going back and forward over a particular sign. With this being a full moon in the sign of Capricorn and conjunct to Pluto, you may feel more emotionally intense. You might feel more emotionally heightened. You could feel a little bit fearful. You could be leaning on the fearful side, or you could really be feeling like you're ready to face some shadowy stuff within you. And as I say, with Saturn being retrograde, the ruler of this full moon in Pisces, you may notice where you have been a little bit avoidant, perhaps in an emotional sense as well, or a spiritual sense. One of the lovely things about this full moon, though, is that it is in an exact sextile to Neptune, also at the critical degree of Pisces. So Neptune is also at the anaretic degree of Pisces. And this is really manifesting for a lot of us as spiritual crisis. Neptune is an exceptionally spiritual planet. It is all about what we cannot see, but what we can feel. And you may find with this one that even the most skeptical among us is perhaps finding connections to something else. Perhaps going over your relationship to the spiritual, perhaps going over your relationship to the divine, and really longing for a sense of connection to something that you don't necessarily see in practice. Neptune is very spiritual, and since Neptune has been going through the sign of Pisces since 2011, this has really woken a lot of people up to their spirituality and their relationship to the divine. At 29 degrees, this can be a mass spiritual awakening for a lot of people. As I say, even the most skeptical could be leaning towards some kind of spirituality, whether that is for some people returning to Christianity, whether that is for some people becoming interested in astrology, whether that is interested in the tarot, psychics, mediums, that type of thing. And with the crisis degree of Pisces, it often reminds me of someone being, in the entertainment industry and being a lifelong skeptic, and perhaps the side of Neptune where they go down the glitz and the glamour and the alcohol and the drugs and things like that, then they become a Christian. It's that kind of shift with 29 degrees of Pisces, and we may witness that with people in our own lives that maybe had one particular spiritual path, because every path is a spiritual path. Even if you're an atheist, it's still a spiritual belief, even if it is lack thereof. But you may notice a lot of people around you changing their views. And this may be because we're realizing with Pluto at the 29th degree of Capricorn that the structures that we had faith in, the governments that we believed would take care of us, those shifts and crumbling and changing, all of that is leading to perhaps wanting connection with something more divine, something bigger. So there can be a lot of people really moving towards different spiritual beliefs. People can also as equally be having a spiritual crisis with 29 degrees, and we may find that the serendipities and the synchronicities are a little bit louder with Neptune being at 29 degrees of Pisces. And you can actually see this play out with movies being released, such as that horror film about the tarot cards, is that in some cases there is this sense of certain factions of people trying to move us away from that connection to the divine and things like that by fear, with Pluto being at 29 degrees. A lot of the time, the easiest way to control people is to make them afraid of something. So you might be witnessing that playing out too. And your intuition might be telling you that with many different things, not just that movie. But 29 degrees of Pisces, this can also bring significant change to prisons. Pisces is a sign associated with institutions that are quite private and behind the scenes. So hospitals, prisons can be changing at this time. There can be significant reform. With Neptune at 29 degrees in retrograde of Pisces, we can be rethinking the way we have set up our prisons and the way that we've set up our hospitals and our relationship to drug and pharmaceutical institutions as well. Another thing just to note that is happening as a wider conversation at the time of this full moon is that Mercury in Leo is going to be in a square with Uranus in Taurus. Now the reason, even though this is quite a common transit astrologically, because Mercury is a very fast moving planet, the reason that this is significant is because Mercury is going to go retrograde early August, and it means that Mercury is going to square Uranus 3 times, which gives it a little bit of additional significance. So happening in the sign of Leo, squaring Uranus in Taurus, we may find that there are some shocks and surprises when it comes to the news, and with Leo that can be Again, that adds to people in positions of prestige and power, leadership, particularly the monarchy, with this being in the sign of Leo and Leo being royalty, squaring Uranus. There can be some shocks and surprises when it comes to leaders and when it comes to different communications and conversations that are coming up publicly, those who take a public center stage. In our own lives, these can be shocking news and discussions that are coming up. We may learn something under this full moon that we did not know, for sure, because there's the connection to Pluto. Secrets can come out, secrets can surprise us, secrets can be very well hidden. Even if we have an intuitive sense with the sextile to Neptune, there can be an intuitive sense of, I feel like this is true, but I'm not seeing it. This full moon can expose certain things, certain secrets. And not all secrets have to be bad, but this does give the energy of, oh, it's surprising, it's shocking, it's not expected when there is a square to Uranus. Venus is also sextiling Jupiter at the time of this full moon, which is actually lovely from a social perspective. It can bring some really nice social events and social energy, the ability to socialize. Venus is going to be in Leo, Jupiter is in Gemini, having great conversations, having great discussions, even if some of these take on a rather surprising tone and you learn something that you didn't know, or something that surprises you or shocks you. You know, at any given time, the stars can be kind of contradictory, so there can be multiple things happening at once. This full moon is one of exposure, but I can't emphasize enough with that degree that some of the changes behind the scenes, you may not know until September, October, November, particularly November. You may not be aware of all of the information coming to your fore, but just know there are things being discussed behind the scenes. And another thing that is quite significant is that it can take back our power by saying less, giving away less information. A lot of the time people confuse those who are quiet as being shy, but sometimes they're just observant and kind of clued into the fact that the more information you give away, the more power you're giving away. So sometimes with a full moon coming around in Capricorn, it's good to keep some things to yourself. It's good to be working on certain things behind the scenes as well. So just a bit of practical advice to summarize this full moon. The conjunction to Pluto, be very wary of letting your fears get the best of you. This can be a powerful time to let go. There's energy of surrender as well with the sextile to Neptune, trusting in the divine plan, because it may be for a lot of us that events that are playing out, both personally and collectively, are quite karmic. They're quite destined because they are seeking to inspire great change and personal growth in our lives, to make changes that sometimes may feel a little bit uncomfortable or unfamiliar. One thing I will say with Neptune being at the anaretic degree of Pisces is that we can, of course, and this is a little rich of me to say, I'm just going to put it out there, this is a bit hypocritical, but we can rely a little bit too much on divination and intuition at times and forego the practical and the logical. And of course, at the same time, with this being at the anaretic degree of Pisces, it can be a case where we're more connected than ever to our intuition, to something spiritual. We can be getting some great tarot readings. We can be having some great predictions coming up. Obviously, with astrology, it is archetypal. It's very rare that you can predict something exactly to the letter, but you can certainly pick up the themes and the events, how they could play out. Obviously, it can play out in different ways all the time, but we could be having some really good luck with the 29th degree of Pisces at pinpointing these things. But it can then become an addiction. It can be an area of escapism. 29 degrees of Pisces is about escapism. You can be relying too much on substances, whether that be alcohol or whether that be plant medicine. You can be going too far in one direction, and that is entirely possible. So just be mindful of that. The beautiful thing about this is that there is a sextile between 29 degrees of Capricorn, very earthy, grounded, logical energy, and Pisces, very spiritual, intuitive, empathic energy. So there is a beautiful connection between the earth and the water placements here. But just as I say, with 29 degrees, be mindful of things going too much in one direction in your life. With Neptune, as I say, be wary of drinking too much, but also just as much. Be careful of relying too much on stimulants such as coffee or tea, and actually dehydrating yourself with Neptune being at the crisis degree of Pisces. It's great for intuition, it's great for receiving messages, but know when that is becoming a tool of escapism or a crutch in life, because there can be as much beauty in the logical, practical, mundane parts of life. Putting your feet on the grass, going for a swim, just being present, enjoying a really good piece of cake if you really like cake. But also with this conjunction to Pluto, the fear-based thinking, sometimes we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Giving into fear, being manipulated into fear so that someone can take away your power, or giving away your power by being fearful. Worst case scenario thinking. With Pluto being in the sign of Aquarius still, these fears can be about the future. These fears can be about, well, if this changes, if this institution falls away, if this is found to be corrupt, what is next? Because a lot of us are very fearful of having more power in our lives. It's not fear of having no control and no power. A lot of the time it's actually the opposite. This can also center around fears surrounding technology. This can also surround fears with AI, for example, with Aquarius being in the mix. And as we move with this Aquarius Capricorn back and forth dance, and we change certain structures to benefit society more than a select few group of people, it can be big change, it can be very profound, and that can be unnerving, and that can be quite scary. With the astrology playing out like that, of course, because not everyone is willing to change. And with Neptune being at the 29th degree of Pisces, not everyone's going to wake up. It's a choice at the end of the day. Not everybody wants to have that sort of insight, or not everybody wants to have that type of experience. Some people are new souls. It is not for everyone. So be respectful and be mindful of that, and don't get too much into someone else's path and try to control their experience. It kind of reminds me of how, you're not meant to wake up a sleepwalker. So don't be pushing people outside of their comfort zones around the time of this full moon, because it can backfire. So as always, I'm going to draw a tarot card for this full moon in Capricorn. And I know I just told you to be wary of using divination too much, but I'm going to do it anyway. And you can do it anyway too. We have free will. Pluto's in Aquarius. Shake it up. But obviously it's if it's becoming an addiction and something that you're relying on too much. And I think a lot of people can really suffer with that at the moment. But with this full moon in Capricorn, do pay attention, extra attention, and I will go into this in the horoscope portion, but do pay attention to your Capricorn house in your birth chart. And if you do not know your Capricorn house because you do not know your ascendant, you can find out your ascendant sign by having your birth chart done for free online. You can use AstroSeek, for example, Cafe Astrology, any of the typical birth chart. You can just type in free birth chart online and you can find one. And you need your exact birth time and location to get your ascendant. But if you don't have those, you don't know those, do feel free to watch for your sun sign. Some astrologers are sun sign based astrologers, so you can use both. And you can listen to both for the most well-rounded picture. But let's see if we can pull up a tarot card for the energy of this full moon in Capricorn. It is quite a heavy one. It's very transformative. There's a lot of power in it. And some people are going to feel very afraid of the power to make change. Some people are going to feel afraid of the power of potential based on the changes that are happening around this time. And some people are going to feel empowered to make change and to transform. Because you have options. Seven of Cups is all about options. And it can be quite confusing. As I say, Neptune is at the crisis degree of Pisces. It can feel a little bit confusion, a little bit foggy. Mercury is in shadow at this time and squaring off with Uranus. There can be brain fog. There can be a little bit of confusion. But there can also be clarity. As much as this full moon has the potential to reveal secrets, it also has the potential to conceal at the same time with that Sabian symbol. So you may be feeling a little bit confused. You may be feeling a little bit lost. Do trust your intuition at this time. You may have a sense of fate at play. You may have a sense of heightened intuition. You may feel very strongly that something is unfolding. And you might want to listen to that little voice inside of you that is telling you something is maybe changing, or it's telling you what to do for the best. If it's intuition. And intuition is never based in fear. It's never a fearful voice. It's not an anxious voice. It's just simply knowing. A lot of the time we simply know, and we doubt that. But do listen to your intuition at this time, because things can get a little bit confusing here and there with this full moon. And it may take a little bit of time before things truly fall into place. That is what I have for the full moon in Capricorn. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you have a beautiful full moon, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi Capricorn, welcome to the full moon in your sign. So Capricorn, this is incredibly important for you. Because not only is this the second full moon that we're having in your sign, This is happening at the last degree of your sign, the anaretic degree, the crisis degree, if you will, and it's conjunct Pluto. So this one is really quite an intense one for you. When we have anything at 29 degrees, it oftentimes brings about this sense of urgency and this desire to make something different, to change something, to transform something. And it just so happens for you that it's happening in your house of self-awareness, your relationship to life, how you approach it. It's also to do with your physical body. And Pluto is conjunct this full moon. Pluto's going to move back into your sign in September until November, and it's going to be crossing this very degree. So this full moon is a good bit of insight into what those final 3 months of Pluto being in your sign are going to be about, wrapping up, what needs to change. There's a sense of now or never with you. So perhaps you're thinking, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to feel this way about my life anymore. I don't want to feel this way about my body anymore. I don't want to approach the world the way I have always done. And Pluto is a very authentic planet. You know, it gets a scary rap, but what Pluto was actually looking for is complete authenticity in a soul level. And that's not always achievable to have it all the time, but this can be a beautiful time for you to let go of some coping mechanisms, some strategies that you've developed that at one point absolutely kept you safe and protected you from whatever it was that you had maybe had bad experience with or fear of. But at this point, these walls are actually not helpful anymore. And they need to go because they're just masks now. You're just hiding yourself effectively, or you're hiding from something or running from something. And that's not to say that I'm saying you're trying to do that, but we all develop these different, coping mechanisms that we don't even realize sometimes. And then a Pluto transit comes along and we think, oh, okay. So the way this may be manifesting for you, Capricorn, is that one, you could be feeling things incredibly intensely, incredibly profoundly, and this can be quite startling if you don't always hold space for your feelings. Obviously we can't always, but I do find with people, particularly who have Saturn-based moons, so if you're a Capricorn moon watching this, or even an Aquarius moon, but if you have your sun, moon, or rising in Capricorn, there's a Saturn element to this. It's not always easy to just simply feel your feelings, and a lot of the time people who have Capricorn placements, when they hear that phrase, they think, what? What do you mean? And it's kind of revolutionary in a sense with Capricorn sometimes. And this is the perfect full moon to give yourself that time, to allow yourself to feel your feelings and let them pass through, to observe them, to see what's really going on beneath the surface. You may have some fears come up about yourself. You may have some fears come up about your life. You may be facing quite a lot of intense shadow, and that's no easy feat. It's no easy feat at all, but you owe it to yourself to give yourself that grace and that compassion. What's beautiful about this full moon is that even though it's happening at the crisis degree, is that it's actually in this really supportive sextile to Neptune, also at the crisis degree of Pisces. So there may be somebody at this time who can offer you compassion and love and no judgment to how you're feeling. So there can be someone who's maybe with Neptune quite spiritual. This can be a friend, this can be a sibling. It can be someone who, if they're not necessarily overtly, obviously spiritual, they can be someone who's very compassionate, who will allow you to feel your feelings and listen to you and tend to you while you go through this. And if it's not a person, Capricorn, this Neptune in the third energy can be choosing more compassionate thoughts, choosing to feel these feelings and observe them with a sense of compassion for yourself, maybe for your younger self, for the past versions of yourself. And it can be a really cathartic and healing process that you're experiencing, Capricorn. And it's no easy feat to have Pluto going over the crisis degree in your sign, and this is obviously going to be going on from September to November. Do not fear it. This is more to do with you witnessing parts of yourself that perhaps you have locked away, hidden away. A lot of you might have a secret that you've been holding for a very long time and you're ready to finally release it and let it go. It could be something that is stopping you from living a life that feels more in alignment with who you are now. Because this, as much as it's the end degree, the end is always the beginning. So this can be the beginning of your new life, Capricorn. If you're willing to let go of the parts of it that no longer serve you and are no longer resonant with who you're becoming. So I do think for a lot of you, this is going to be a time of letting go. And for some people in a more practical sense, if it's to do with the physical body, some of you may be finally getting to the root of something health related, figuring out what it is. I do think with Pluto being in the mix, it may be something that is psychological in nature. This could be a diagnosis of some kind that really makes you understand, oh, okay, that's why I think like this. Or that's why I feel this way. Or if you're working through something with a therapist, you might really get to the root of what the issue is, why these patterns are happening. Because a full moon at the crisis degree conjunct Pluto is all about breaking patterns. So the profound work and healing that you're doing right now, Capricorn, can actually really set you up for great things in the future. That is something that I want you to know. So if you are feeling things quite intensely, do have grace and compassion with yourself. Be patient with yourself, but please don't ignore and try and push down whatever you're feeling. And if you do have a, Neptunian, compassionate, kind friend or acquaintance, or even a partner who can listen to you, this is a really important time to reach out to somebody if you need to talk through some of these things and face some of these shadows. So I'm going to get you a tarot card and see what comes up for you, Capricorn. We have the Wheel of Fortune. Fantastic card. So this is all about closing out a particular cycle. You're at the end of closing out one particular cycle. It's the Pluto and Capricorn cycle. And just bear in mind, this is at 29 degrees, of course, and that is quite intense. But you have had, in the last 4 years, Jupiter crossed this degree, Saturn crossed this degree. In fact, Saturn, your ruler, crossed this degree a few times in 2020. So just know that you have gone over this degree quite a few times. But Pluto is saying now is the time to make the profound change. It's not always about the job change. It's not always about the goals in the career. This is time, Capricorn, to make a very deep, profound change in terms of your relationship with yourself. So the Wheel of Fortune is saying that a particular cycle is closing out, and also that maybe you're in the midst of beginning, as I said before, you can't have big change without new beginnings. So there is perhaps a new life cycle beginning at this period as well. That is quite destined for a lot of you. 29 degrees is a very karmic degree. So there can be something playing out in your life that is a very significant chapter or storyline. That is what I have for you, Capricorn. I hope you have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Aquarius, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Aquarius, this is an interesting one for you because this full moon is conjunct Pluto. Now the full moon is at 29 degrees of Capricorn, which is your natal 12th house. But it is conjunct Pluto, which is actually still in Aquarius, your first house. Pluto is going to leave your sign for 3 months, September, October, November of this year, and then it's going to re-enter your sign, and it's going to be there for a very long time. So you're going to be getting comfortable with this. But basically, Aquarius, for a lot of you, you're already experiencing profound change. Now, full moons, when they happen in the 12th house, this can be really, on one hand, it can actually be quite magical. So when the 12th house is in play, it can be that we have these really interesting, vivid dreams that give us clues to what's going on beneath us, or sometimes insights as to what is happening ahead of us. So you might be finding at this time your dreams are more vivid. You might be finding that you need a good bit more sleep and rest, Aquarius. So do make sure that you're taking as much time to rest as you need. You're not necessarily going to be running on full power at this time of the full moon in your 12th. But this is at the crisis degree. So it's now or never. And for you, this is the house of letting go. So you may be realizing that there's an ending occurring in your life. You're having to let go of something or someone or some people. And you may find with Pluto being in the mix, Pluto rules your 10th house. Maybe for some of you, you're letting go of a job, you're leaving a job, you're leaving the workplace, you're leaving behind a particular professional chapter, you're letting go of a particular goal. A particular goal is no longer in alignment with who you're becoming now that Pluto's in your first house. Pluto's been in your first house for a good while now, since the beginning of the year. Obviously had a really brief stint there in 2023, but a lot of you might have found this year that perhaps profound transformation is already happening when it comes to maybe your relationship to yourself, your relationship to the world, your approach to life, or maybe even to your physical body. You may have made some significant changes there as well with Pluto. But this full moon is saying, okay, well, these are big profound changes on the horizon for you. Who you're becoming is quite different to who you've been, but it's time to let go of a few things. Now, I think for a lot of you, you might have some fears that come to the surface. You might actually be dealing with the memories of past betrayals. For some of you, that can be past infidelities. For some of you, that can be past betrayals from friendships in the workplace. There can also, this is not me saying that someone's betraying you now, but I'm saying that it can be that you're dealing with these past memories, things that maybe you thought you were over, but you're not so over. Some of you could be having quite intense or scary nightmares, things that are maybe a bit upsetting to you, dealing with some fears. And you might need some time to just take to yourself, Aquarius, to reflect on what is coming up for you and how you're feeling about it. You might find yourself being a little bit more emotional and a little bit more reflective. There can absolutely also be secrets that are coming out around this time. Maybe you're revealing a secret to somebody, or perhaps someone's revealing a secret to you. There can be something that's coming up to the surface, Aquarius. But I will say, with Pluto being in your sign and retrograding then back into your 12th house, there is still some stuff to come up. There's still some emotions that need to be felt. For everyone, this full moon's quite emotionally intense. Any full moon conjunct Pluto would be. But when your sign is involved, it can be a little bit more intense for you. And as I was saying to Capricorn, when you're a Saturn ruled sign and your traditional ruler is Saturn, so you still feel the Saturnian energy. As Uranian as you can be at times, you still have this co-rulership from Saturn. And a lot of the time with people who have Aquarius or Capricorn in their big three, they find that feeling your feelings is sometimes quite an alien concept. And learning about it can be quite revolutionary. So if you allow yourself space to feel your feelings at this time, it can be really cathartic for you. It can be a really beautiful moment to let go and surrender and allow yourself to be held. Now, a lot of people are finding with the sextile to Neptune that they're getting that sort of, that catharsis is going alongside something spiritual, whether that's prayer, meditation, whether that is connecting to spiritual people, working with spiritual practitioners, healers, that kind of thing. With you, Neptune being in the second house is making me feel that perhaps you're finding that you are developing better personal spiritual habits, whether that is meditation, whether that is knowing when you've had too much coffee, too much tea, allowing yourself to simply form these habits and routines that could be a little bit mundane in theory, but in practice have really good benefits for your mental and emotional well-being, because this is a very mental and emotional based full moon for you. So if you can prioritize your spiritual health, your emotional health, this full moon could be a really cathartic and beautiful time for you with some very healthy coping mechanisms. With Neptune being at the 29th degree, do be careful of overspending, spending money on things that you don't notice. Pay attention to your bank details, the money that's coming in, the money that's going out, because with Neptune, there is sometimes an elusive escapist energy. So we can think, oh, it's fine, I'll get this. And then you look at it a week later and think, okay, I've maybe gone a bit overboard here. Or you don't notice things coming in and out. So just try to make sure that you're maintaining a sense of practicality there with your finances as well. This full moon is, after all, ruled by Saturn. Saturn is sitting unaspected but retrograde in your second house. So in terms of financial habits, try not to ignore them. Try not to ignore what's going on with your finances at this time. And perhaps be careful of spending when you're feeling a little bit blue or a little bit down. Try and sit with the feelings instead if you can. So Aquarius, let's get you a tarot card for this full moon and see what comes up for Aquarius. Oh, we have the Strength card, which is lovely. This is invisible force, gentle persuasion, compassion. So this is about holding compassion for yourself. This is about connecting with your inner strength, understanding that you can be a strong human being and still feel your feelings and your emotion. But I think a lot of you are maybe feeling quite gently strong at this time. You're perhaps feeling, that you have, with Pluto being in your sign and you understanding now that you're going through profound changes and the power that you actually have, because Pluto is all about power. You're realizing your inner power. I think a lot of you might find it easier to tend to your own needs at this time. That's what I have for you, Aquarius, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Pisces, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Pisces, this full moon is, as I've been saying to the other signs, very intense because it's a full moon conjunct Pluto. And as if that wasn't intense enough, it is happening at the anoretic degree, the crisis degree. So this one does have a lot of emotional potential. Now, it's interesting for you because you're a sign that is typically a bit better at feeling your feelings and experiencing your emotions and the highs and lows of life, the ebbs and flows of the tides as the fish that you are. But you still might find this one quite intense because Pluto is sitting in your 12th house, and you can be dealing with some fears, you can be dealing with some phobias, you can still be doing a lot of inner transformation and really going through some deep healing with Pluto going through the 12th house. You know, you can really be uprooting what's going on in your subconscious. Some of you might have started working with therapists if you don't already, or working with counselors, or even in some cases shamans or Reiki healers, but you're more interested in what's going on beneath, and you're more interested in working through the stuff that nobody can see. And that can seem at times unrewarding because you're doing a lot of this work behind the scenes that you're not being necessarily outwardly acknowledged for or rewarded for. But you might notice around the time of this full moon that a friend says to you, hey, do you know what? You're doing really well. Like I've noticed you break these patterns. I've noticed you have made these changes, and I'm really impressed. I feel like you're different. I feel like your emotional reactions are different. And you might actually get a bit of praise for the inner work that you have been doing. So just bear that in mind. But this full moon is really shining a light on your friendship sector. And this could be that perhaps a friend is leaving your life. This could be that perhaps someone is leaving a team or a group or a society that you're a part of. That could be quite a significant loss for you. You might really feel the loss of this person. You might really be finding it quite emotionally. You might be feeling a lot of mixed emotions about it, really. If someone is leaving your team or your friendship group, or maybe a friend is moving, with Pluto being in the mix, because Pluto does rule your 9th house of travel. Maybe you have a friend moving, maybe you have a friend going off to university, maybe you're leaving a group or a friendship. You know, say you're part of a friendship group and everyone's going off to different universities or something like that. You could be noticing this cycle wrapping up in your life, Pisces. It can also be that for some of you, you're ready to let go of a friendship if it has become unhealthy, with Pluto being in the mix. Pluto is going to retrograde back into your 11th house from September to November. And this is wrapping up a cycle since 2008 that could have been quite profound in terms of the experiences you've had with groups of people, friendships, teams. Could have been a lot of power struggles there. And this might be a now or never moment to break a pattern when it comes to your place within groups, your place within societies, teams, and your relationship to friendships as well. It's maybe time for you to change something, Pisces. You might feel a sense of urgency. Perhaps you don't resonate with a group that you're a part of anymore, and you're thinking, I can't be part of this. This doesn't resonate with me. This isn't right. You're seeing things very clearly, and you're thinking, okay, well, this behavior is not okay. I don't want to be part of this anymore. For some of you, that can be, as well, as I say, realizing patterns playing out with friendships, and you're figuring out ways to change that so that it doesn't happen in the future. It can also be a time when you're really connecting with your dreams and your vision for the future. And if you have goals, this is kind of the time when you're thinking, oh, the future is now. This is now or never. I'm going to make this happen. I have to work on this. I have to get very clear on what it is that I need to do to get there as well. The ruler of this full moon, Saturn, is in your sign, so you are very self-accountable at this particular moment. Saturn is retrograde, so you may be taking some time to reflect. There can be a bit of stalling that goes on when Saturn is retrograde. In terms of personal goals, things might have slowed a little bit, but it's not time to let go of them completely. This may be a time when you're reviewing your approach to your personal goals and how you approach the future, but it can also be a time when you reconnect to the goals that have maybe fallen by the wayside, or reconnect to your original motivation, Pisces, for what it is that you wanted to do. So let's get you a tarot card for this full moon in Capricorn, Pisces. Okay, so we actually got two came out for you. They just sort of leapt out. We have the Star and the King of Wands. So the Star is all about wish fulfillment. This is happening in the 11th house, which is to do with wish fulfillment. So it is possible that there is some sort of wish manifesting. With the King of Wands, this could be linked to entrepreneurship or your professional success, or something that you feel is perhaps a creative vision of yours. You know, the sun is in your 5th house, and the 5th house is all about love and romance and things like that. It's also about creativity. So there might be something that you're working on creatively that you get some recognition for. The 11th house does tend to make someone quite visible on social media. So perhaps for a lot of you, you're getting some kind of wish fulfillment when it comes to your social media presence, if you are on social media, or perhaps you're getting a bit of spotlight. The 29th degree is actually associated with fame. So if you are on social media, you may find that if you put up a post, it goes viral, or you're getting some sort of, you know, you're maybe getting your flowers for something. The star is also about healing though. So you may find that this full moon is really quite healing for you. And with the King of Wands here, you may also notice that a fire sign person is playing a big part in your life at this time. That can be an Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. So that is what is coming up for you at the full moon, Pisces. I hope you have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Aries, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Aries, this is a significant full moon when it comes to your professional life. So you may be working, you may not be working. I'm going to cover all grounds with this, so just hold tight if you're not. But this full moon is illuminating you professionally. Now, it's happening at the 29th degree. So this is a crisis degree, and it can bring a sense of urgency. It can bring a sense of necessary change, and it can actually bring necessary change too. If you're unwilling to make any change, it can bring it to your door. So because we've had 2 full moons back to back, do think back to what was going on in your life around the 20th, 21st of June, around the solstice, because it may have some correspondence to this if you're looking for pattern recognition, because that's what astrology is essentially. So you may find that whatever was going on in your career, maybe something was being initiated, maybe something was getting off the ground, maybe something was, you know, being discussed back then, and now you're wrapping up a particular cycle. So one thing that I'm seeing for you, Aries, is that, you know, this being at 29th degree, 29 degree is actually a fame degree. You could be finding at this full moon that you're getting some recognition for what you do professionally, whether that's having your face in the papers, or, you know, having some significant recognition online, or getting an award, or getting a promotion, or you are wrapping up a particular cycle. Aries, this full moon seems to be pretty significant. Now, Pluto is going to be going over this degree from September to November. And that's significant too, because that means that there are changes afoot when it comes to your professional life, and something needs to change. So on one hand, a lot of you could be getting great exposure. You could be wrapping up a particular chapter, celebrating some success. And particularly if it's for the work that you've been doing behind the scenes, Aries, because this full moon is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in your 12th house of behind the scenes work. You've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, not necessarily all of it recognized and appreciated because it's not necessarily known about. And I do find when your 10th house ruler is transiting the 12th, the things that you are doing behind the scenes are pivotal to your success. So if you're not necessarily getting the recognition that you deserve for the work you've been doing behind the scenes that nobody sees, just give yourself a pat in the back. You might find at this time that people are a bit more appreciative of it, or people are a bit more aware of it. So with this full moon, a couple of ways this can play out, as I say, the recognition. But this is at a crisis degree. If you've been working too much, if you've been working too hard, this might be a time when you think, I need to make some changes here. This is maybe not sustainable in the long run. Is this in alignment with what I want for my future? Because, you know, you have Pluto in the 11th now. Pluto is in Aquarius while conjunct this full moon, and albeit Pluto will be going back into Capricorn for a short stint, it's going to regain entry to your 11th house in November. And you're rethinking your vision of the future. It's changing. And so you might realize, okay, well, if my vision for the future is changing, what do I need to change professionally? Is this going to line up with what I have planned? Is this going to make sense with what I have? Am I going to be able to work this much? Or am I going to be able to work in this field? Am I going to be able to change things with the commitments that I have? Am I going to be able to make changes to my career? Aries, because, you know, you don't want to get bored. You're not a sign that likes to get bored. But I do think a lot of you have some significant visibility and influence at this time. You may find that if you have a boss, or if you have someone that you're answering to, they're not necessarily as around as much as you'd want with Saturn being unaspected. So just bear in mind around this full moon, you might have to step up to the plate that little bit more in terms of holding the power. And I think for a lot of you, you might also be finding at this time, maybe you're entering a position of power in your career, or maybe you are, being promoted for some of you. Some of you, if you're really in a career that's not working, you might find that this is the time when you're seriously considering leaving a profession or a job. And over the next few months with Pluto being at the crisis degree, it might make that feeling more intense. And it's more so if it doesn't align with you. If you really don't feel like it's true to who you are and true to your essence, you may decide that now is the time to start thinking about leaving. And you're reassessing your long-term goals in general, Aries. That can be quite a significant thing that you're doing, is rethinking. And you could have some quite intense feelings come up about your career, and you might find that you notice if you have any behaviors career-wise, because it's always very interesting to observe patterns in your career, your relationships to people that you work with, and how these different dynamics can play out, or the way that you work oftentimes reflects your upbringing. Your relationship to your boss can sometimes mirror your relationship to your father, or you can find that if you had someone in your family, just different patterns. I won't go too much into it, but different patterns can play out in the workplace psychologically. And with Pluto in the mix, you might notice something. You could actually get to the root of, oh, I'm having so much trouble with this person because it reminds me of my relationship to whoever. Or you might notice, okay, actually, I'm really working overtime every night because I don't like this part of myself, or I don't like this part of my life, or I'm, trying to avoid this. You can notice patterns coming up at this time, Aries, that you might want to pay attention to when it comes to your career and when it comes to your work ethic and things like that as well. So let's get you a tarot card. I also think for some of you, you have a little bit of the sextile to Neptune in your 12th house. Some of you might be consulting professionally a healer, someone who is spiritual in nature. For some of you, it could be, someone who works in the healing profession. That doesn't have to be spiritual. It doesn't have to be a Reiki healer. It doesn't have to be anybody like that. It can actually just be that maybe you're seeking counsel from someone who's a mental health professional or something like that to help you navigate the changes that you're making career-wise, or just consulting them about your career in general, with Neptune being there in the 12th, forming a supportive aspect. Some of you might find that a little bit of alone time and downtime really might help you recharge, and your dreams could be exceptionally vivid at this time, Aries, with Neptune at the crisis degree of your 12th house. Something has to end for everybody, but for you it's like, the message is quite loud. For you in Aquarius, it's quite loud. Something has to give, something has to end, something has to change. You can't avoid it anymore. I think for a lot of you it could be emotional, with Neptune being in the 12th. The emotional work, needing to let go of a fear, needing to let go of a phobia, working through something in the subconscious so that you can be successful with what it is that you want to do, Aries. So your tarot card, much like, who was the first person that got this? Capricorn. Much like Capricorn, your tarot card is actually the Wheel of Fortune. So there is destiny afoot here for you guys. It seems to be that the cardinal signs, it's very destined, of course, with the full moon being in a cardinal sign. So of course there is destined activity afoot. But it's time. This card says it's time. Something has to change. There's one cycle ending and a new cycle beginning. And you just have to accept the fact that sometimes endings need to occur for new beginnings to occur. And sometimes you have to wrap up a particular cycle before another one can begin. So you're in the process of making significant changes, Aries, when it comes to, in particular, your career, but also who you want to be in the world, how you want to show up, what your professional goals are, or your goals in general. They don't have to be professional, but who you want to be known as, what you want to be known for, the goals that make you you, the things that you work on, the things that people would describe you. If you were to be described as say you're a doctor. People would say you're a doctor, or say you are part of the PTA, or say you're part of whatever. You know, it's whoever it is that you show up to the world as. Aries is what is possibly changing under this full moon. Maybe you just don't want to be one thing anymore. You want to be different things. That's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Taurus, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Taurus, this full moon is happening for you in your natal 9th house. And the 9th house is, by its very nature, broad. So there's a lot of ground to cover here. So I'm going to give you the most likely examples. Obviously, astrology it doesn't always play out exactly as we predict, but we can give you the themes where it might be making significant changes, or you might be having some transformation. This full moon is happening at the 29th degree, and it is conjunct Pluto, so it's intense. The feeling of it is intense. The urgency of it is intense as well. Pluto is going to cover this degree from September to November. So there is a sense of urgency and a need to make change in the Capricorn part of your chart. For some of you, that could involve traveling. That could involve relocating. It might be time to take that trip you've been thinking of for years. You might realize this is a now or never moment. Say, for example, you have an older friend who lives on the other side of the world, and just in terms of, you know, practicality, in terms of life, whatever reason, you're thinking, okay, well, if I don't go now, I'm never going to go. If I don't take this trip, I'm never going to take it, and I might never see this person again. That's a very morbid way of looking at this, but Pluto is here. So I have seen people have those regrets while Pluto's been going over the 29th degree before. So this full moon is highlighting that energy. You might decide that you're going to take that trip. Maybe from between September to November, you're thinking, now's the time, I need to go, I need to explore this. Maybe you're at a certain age and you're thinking, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. In terms of taking a trip or a gap year or something like that, it may be now or never with a travel plan, Taurus, or a relocation. Or say, for example, for some of you in a long distance relationship, you're thinking, well, what are we going to do about this? So, you know, there's a trine to Mars. It's out of sign, but there's a trine to Mars with this full moon, and Mars rules your relationship. So maybe for some of you that's the case. But it can also be for others of you, this is to do with publishing, because the 9th house is to do with publishing. Maybe you're thinking, I want to write this book, I want to publish this book. Something could be happening around the time. It's now or never. It's time to act on it. If you're a writer, you're getting that illumination. For some of you, you might get a bit of fame for it. 29 degrees associated with fame. You could be getting a book published. You could be getting your works published. You could be getting a publisher under this full moon. It can also be that in terms of your spiritual perspectives, the religion you believe in, or your views of the world, they may all be kind of changing and transforming, and you may realize you don't see the world the same anymore. You know, with 29 degrees being a crisis degree and it happening in the sign of Capricorn, for a lot of people politically, or in terms of their relationship to, you know, certain systems, big systems, governments, banks, that kind of thing, the truth has come out. There has been a lot of exposure. People feel differently when they know the truth of the matter, or they know more about the matter. So you too may be having some sort of change or crisis of faith, where you're viewing the world differently, or you're changing your viewpoint. And this can be, for some of you, an epiphany. It can be a beautiful thing. It can be transcendence. There's a very tight sextile to Neptune and Pisces in your 11th house, and this can be quite healing. You could be finding yourself surrounded by spiritual friends, loving friends, compassionate friends who are supporting you in your travels or supporting your vision. You might find that if you're traveling, you have friends to go with you. You could be traveling when you're traveling, you could be meeting people that really feel like soul family as well, with Neptune being in the 11th house, Taurus. Connecting to people in different lands that really you feel connected to on a soul level, or traveling to places you feel connected to on a soul level. For some of you, this could be a spiritual trip, spiritual travels and things like that as well. But I do think that if you are traveling, or if you're sitting and considering your viewpoints of the world, I think a lot of it can actually be, while quite intense, quite peaceful too. Some of you with that Pluto conjunction could actually be working through some religious trauma. And that might be that if you were raised in a specific religion that really hurt you, this could be a time when you're processing some of those experiences and those emotions. And that could be changing your relationship to spirituality in general. Maybe you're working through a few things and now you see spirituality differently. It can be very spiritual for you, and it can be a real interesting place for you, Taurus, to navel gaze and just observe. And I think a lot of you, if you don't already, you could get quite a good book out of this. You know, the viewpoints and the theories and the opinions that you're having right now, it feels like you're in a very philosophical mood at the time of this full moon. But as I say, I do think some of you could be working through some intense religious trauma or, you know, spiritual trauma, because some people can have, you know, very traumatic experiences within spiritual world, and we'll see that with Neptune at 29 degrees. It can expose some of the trickery that goes on. So you might be processing some of those feelings at the time of this full moon. For some of you as well, you could be graduating. The ninth house is to do with higher education. You could be graduating, you could be getting your degree, you could be getting your diploma, you could be wrapping up a period of study. This could be the end of studying something in particular. And this may be a sense of urgency. Maybe you have to study really hard for your exams at this particular time. Maybe you have to work really, really, really hard to get to where you want to go, Taurus. Because with Pluto still at the time of this full moon in your 10th house, you might be changing your vision of what you want to do professionally too. And you're really being asked to step into your power when it comes to your professional life, Taurus. To be in a powerful position, to be more autonomous, to be more self-accountable. That's something that is very much coming up for you as well at the time of this full moon. Let's get you a tarot card and see what comes up. Oh, interesting. We have the Four of Coins, which is the Four of Pentacles. This is actually in reverse, though. I don't typically read reversals, but I'm going to do it for you in this case, because this actually says an uncluttered life, minimalism, less is more, reevaluating priorities, and release materialism. A lot of you could be doing a bit of a declutter at the time of this full moon, releasing some stuff. With this being a very spiritual house for you, perhaps you're actually thinking, okay, I feel more zen whenever I have less stuff around me. I feel more zen. And you might be getting rid of some things. Taurus can be a sign associated with materialism and clutter. And this may be a time when you're realizing you want to get rid of some of that stuff because it actually has a negative impact. And maybe some of you are deciding you want to sell all your stuff and travel. Or maybe some of you are wanting to travel really light at the time of this full moon. That could be something coming up as well. That is what I have for you, Taurus, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Gemini, and welcome to the full moon in Capricorn horoscope for your sign. So Gemini, this is the second full moon we're having in Capricorn, which means it is the second full moon we're having in your 8th house. And a lot of people are quite fearful of the 8th house because it is associated with all things taboo, and it has that reputation of, you know, the only things that are certain in life are death and taxes, and they both come under the 8th house. So a lot of people fear it, but the way that I think this is really working for you, Gemini, is where you could let go of what is no longer yours to carry. The reason the 8th house is associated with death is that it often is more to do with the metaphorical kind, the transformation, but it can also be with what happens after the fact. So that can be where you're inheriting something. Now, inheritance does not have to be financial. It can be, and there can be for a lot of you something coming up to do with inheritance at this time. You may be, if you're old enough, thinking about your own mortality, and maybe you're deciding now is the time to make a will, now is the time to get my affairs in order, now is the time to figure out, you know, life insurance, funeral cover, those types of things. You may very well be thinking about that for some of you. But it can also actually be, Gemini, that you're thinking about your past traumas, your psychological baggage, what you've inherited from your family, or some traumas that have maybe been affecting you that you've not looked at yet. And around the time of this full moon, you're thinking, I actually feel like I don't want to deal with this psychologically anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore. And you may be deciding now is the time to work through it. The 8th house is a house associated with trauma, and this can sometimes be ancestral. So you may be very aware at this time about patterns in your family line or in your history that need to be worked through, need to be changed. And that can be very, cultural as well. So maybe for some of you, you're noticing some things you'd actually quite like to work on, some patterns you'd like to break in your life. And you may be having a sense of urgency that, okay, well, I need to face this now or never, because this is really getting to me. It can be that kind of energy. It's a very intense full moon. And when it's happening in the 8th house, it makes things more, you could feel a little bit more easily triggered, a little bit more on edge, a little bit more psychologically raw or vulnerable. There can be something in your life you realize is psychological sunburn. So people don't realize it, but then they touch it and you suddenly react in a way that maybe feels out of proportion, but in reality, it's a valid response that you're having. It's a trauma response. It's something that you're maybe realizing under this full moon. I need to work on this because this is affecting me. There is that sense of now or never. So for some of you, this could be, okay, I've never wanted to see a therapist, but I think this might actually be a good time because I'm struggling with this. For some of you, you could actually be struggling with grief, or you could be reaching the end of a rather traumatic cycle in your life and thinking, I have been through a lot. I think I need some help. That can be something that's coming up for you as well. There is a sextile to Neptune, which means for a lot of people that are looking for help, you could find someone fits the bill of being quite compassionate, quite caring, quite non-judgmental. For you, Gemini, this might actually be happening in your career. So there could be someone that you work with. It could be a boss. It could be a mentor. It could be someone in your workplace in general who is a Neptune type of person. They can be a Pisces. They don't have to be a Pisces, but it can be someone who's maybe a bit more spiritual or faithful, or someone who's very compassionate, and they can be offering you some help or assistance with maybe your financial affairs, or maybe even your emotional affairs that can be going on at this time as well. That can be something that's happening. You might also find that when it comes to what you're trying to work through, at the same time, someone in a position of authority might not necessarily be as present. So if you have a boss that you're trying to contact, maybe they're off sick or something like that, and you're finding that you're dealing with a lot of stuff that's not yours to deal with, that can be something that's happening as well at the time of this full moon, Gemini. One thing that is really nice for you, though, is that Jupiter is in your sign, and Jupiter is in a lovely sextile to Venus in Leo. In your 3rd house. So you could have some really nice conversations at the time of this full moon with other people. There could be some contacts going on that feel as though you're being supported. I do think there's probably someone, Gemini, who is looking out for you or offering you some sort of compassion at this time. And if it's not that, it might be that when it comes to your career, in your period of reflection, with Neptune being there at the crisis degree, you may be thinking, okay, well, I don't want to engage in any patterns of escapism or running away from this to soothe my issues. It can be that for some of you, you're wanting to give up certain substances, or you're wanting to stop drinking, or you're wanting to perhaps let go of whatever coping mechanisms that you have built in order to tolerate something you don't want anymore in your life, or something that you are afraid of changing that you have been tolerating. You're no longer willing to escape it either. You're really thinking about that. So I'm going to get you a tarot card, Gemini, and see what's coming up. The full moon does have an out of sign trine to Mars for you in your sign. So you might be finding that around the time of this full moon, you're really feeling quite motivated to change things. And maybe you have a good bit of bravery going on as well, Gemini. You're feeling kind of brave. Your tarot card is the King of Coins, which is the King of Pentacles. And this could represent an actual person in your life. It can be an earth sign, a Capricorn, Virgo, or a Taurus. It doesn't have to be. But it can be around the time of this full moon that you are actually working quite hard and you're really thinking about what you need to change when it comes to your career. As I say, the ruler of this full moon, Saturn, is in your career sector. So you may be reconsidering your career and what you need to change in order for it to be more in alignment with who you are, what it is that you need to, what it is that you need to look at. I think with Neptune being at the crisis degree of your 10th house, maybe you've been avoiding certain things, maybe you've been running away from certain things, maybe you've been using work as a coping mechanism to escape from some stuff. But I think a lot of you are really, at the time of this full moon, looking into what you can change to make a better career for yourself. You know, what is going to work better for you in the long run. Gemini. That is what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Cancer, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Cancer, this full moon is highlighting your relationship and partnership sector. So this can be highlighting or bringing your attention to a romantic relationship, your partner, your spouse, but it can also be a business partnership or business relationship is being highlighted at the time of this full moon. Now, this full moon is a really intense one. It's conjunct Pluto, which means that whatever is coming up at this time, emotionally speaking, it can be powerful, it can be intense. You can have some power struggles going on at the time of this full moon, but it can also be that you're getting some sort of recognition of an issue or of a completion of a particular cycle. So, for example, say you're in a relationship of any kind, you guys might be reaching a milestone. There might be something significant going on in your relationship, in your partnership at the time of this full moon. And you might be recognizing it publicly with the conjunction to Pluto. It can also be a case that for some of you, this is where you're choosing to, and you will already know at this point, but if you're choosing to walk away from a relationship or let a relationship go, you may also realize within a relationship or partnership, if something actually really needs to change, something really needs to be transformed in order to allow both of you your greatest sense of authenticity, for want of throwing that word around quite a bit, but to allow yourself more room in that partnership or relationship to bring your best selves forward. So it doesn't have to be that you don't need to end a relationship at this time, but you can certainly transform it. And there's a need to transform it. Something has to change within a key relationship, otherwise it may no longer be sustainable. You have Pluto still in your 8th house, and the 8th house is to do with other people's money. So at the time of this full moon, perhaps if you're in a business partnership, you're getting some sort of funding, some sort of loan, some sort of grant, some sort of maybe even mortgage for a premises. Or say you're in a romantic relationship, some of you could be at the time of this full moon getting a mortgage for a new home, or inheriting something as a partnership. There does seem to be a link to other people's money with this alliance, with this relationship, with this partnership at the time of this full moon. It might also be a time when in a particular partnership you're putting everything on the table. You're talking about things that need to be discussed very deeply, very vulnerably. You're talking about your secrets, you're talking about your fears, you're talking about your phobias. There can be a lot of there's a lot of room for vulnerability at the time of this full moon for everybody. For you, it's in terms of your relationships. Maybe for some of you, if you're dating someone, if you're just getting into a relationship, this full moon can also highlight the intensity of your feelings and the depth of your feelings. 29 degrees is a pretty karmic degree. So to have it in a relationship or romantic house, you know, for the different signs, you and Virgo have these different houses aspected. It can be very intense emotionally when it comes to your feelings for another person. And that can be great. That can be romantic. That can be the feeling this person's your soulmate. And then it can also be for some of you pure hatred. You know, Pluto is very intense, whatever the feeling. But I think for most of you, it's an opportunity to transform or change something. And even if you're single, if you've nobody in mind, this can be a time to really work through some patterning when it comes to relationships, when it comes to the way you approach relationships, or you may finally get a sense of, oh, do you know what? I've just realized there's a pattern with every single person I've dated. And you see that pattern and you work through it. And now things will be different because you are conscious of it. Being conscious of something is the best way to take your power back from it. It's what we don't know that can be a troubling thing. And you might actually have some sort of secret revealed to you by a partner or someone significant in your life at the time of this full moon as well, Cancer. Now, the thing about this full moon that's really lovely is that it is in a sextile to Neptune in your 9th house. So with Neptune in your 9th house sextiling this full moon in your partnership sector, it can be that when it comes to a relationship issue, a partnership issue, you're seeing the higher perspective. You're seeing what needs to change. You can almost see it from a bird's eye view. You're maybe finding that you're quite devoted to making this change happen. You have a sense of devotion maybe for whoever it is that you're involved with at this time. And you have the wisdom maybe from traveling, maybe from higher learning, whatever it is, you have the wisdom to make the changes that are, best aligned for you and probably somebody else as well. So that's what I have for you, Cancer. I'm going to pull you a tarot card and see what's coming up for you at the time of this full moon. Oh, we have the Hermit. So this is really about soul searching. It is about solitude. So some of you might be realizing that in a relationship or a partnership, you need more alone time. Obviously, for some of you, it is a desire maybe to go it alone. But that's obviously only for a select few of you. I think a lot of you could be doing some serious soul searching at this time. Neptune being in the 9th is a beautiful time to do some soul searching, to spend some time alone and maybe figure out what it is that you want from your relationships or what it is that you needs to change. Maybe you're traveling at this time, or maybe you're thinking about where you want to travel with a partner, or you and a partner are planning a trip. You could also be dealing with a Virgo at this time, as the Hermit represents the zodiac sign Virgo. And you may find that you, at the time of this full moon, are getting some solid advice from somebody else as well. That is what I have for you, Cancer, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Leo, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Leo, it's actually 2222 when I see the clock right now, so I feel like that might be significant for you as an angel number if you're interested in angel numbers. I never know what they mean, so I can't tell you, but I know a lot of people are. But Leo, this full moon is the second dose of Capricorn energy for all of us, and for you it's happening in your sector of health. So this is the 29th degree. The 29th degree is known as a crisis degree. Something has to change when it comes to your health, when it comes to your well-being, when it comes to your wellness. I have noticed, you can certainly see it publicly, a lot of Leo risings have been with Pluto going in and out of Capricorn over the crisis degree, and Pluto will return there from September to November. This is not to scare you, by the way. I have noticed that a lot of Leo risings have had some sort of health crisis while Pluto has been there. And if it's not health, it can be work as well. And I'll get to that in just a second. But this is the time to really listen to your intuition about what you need to change from a health perspective. What would be better for you to do? What would be better for you to let go of and release? What can you let go of in order to be healthier? That may mean letting go of a particular food. That might mean letting go of a particular mentality. It really depends, Leo, on what it is that is right for you. That is such a personal issue. I couldn't even speculate for you what it would be. But you might notice that something needs to change from a health perspective. It may also be that it needs to change from a work perspective at the same time. The two can be linked. So you may be needing to let go of a particular job for the sake of your health. You might need to be letting go of a particular service that you provide as part of your health. You might need to change the way that you work, the hours that you work, how much you work. And there can be significant changes going on when it comes to your work and the work that you do, Leo. And I think with this full moon, it could be really illuminating what that is that you need to change. And I think intuitively you may know. But because it's conjunct Pluto, you might be feeling quite intensely about your work or about your health. Emotions could come to the surface. If you have been dealing with a health issue, your emotions surrounding that health issue could very much come to the surface. And for a lot of you, it can also be, in terms of fitness and well-being, you may want to make some significant changes. Some of you could actually find yourself, say from September to November, you could completely be transforming your fitness. You could be going from someone who does not even like walking to someone who runs a marathon, with Pluto going over the crisis degree, the urgency, because you feel something needs to change. You really want to change something. Some of you might feel like your job needs to change. You might think, this is not working for me. This day job is not working for me. You could have co-workers leaving. You could have employees leaving your workplace. You could have changes in terms of your work, of the services that you provide, and what your daily routine will be. Your daily routine could be changing quite significantly at this time, Leo, maybe by changes in your job or changes that you're making to your day-to-day life. This could also be a time when something comes up crisis-wise with a pet, if you have a pet. So do pay attention to your pet if they're giving off any signals that there might be something wrong. It's a great full moon to get it investigated, because Pluto is in the mix and Pluto is a great detective. So if you're having health issues with a pet, this could be a good time to take them to the vet, or this may be a time where you notice if you have a pet that's been very unwell for a long time and is unfortunately passing, this may be the time when that happens, with Pluto being there in the mix as well. I do think for a lot of you, this is going to be a time where you're very determined to make some changes when it comes to your health and your routine, and what it is that you're eating, how you're exercising is all subject to change. And I think for some of you at the time of this full moon as well, if you are trying to get to the bottom of an issue or investigate something, this may very well be when you find out what the issue is. As I say, it's a crisis degree. It's very, with Pluto, great detective work going on here. You might be able to get to the root of something that you've not been able to figure out and know what it is that you need to change as well, Leo. There's a lovely sextile coming in from Neptune in your 8th house. So for some of you with the 8th house, there's a lot about healers coming up with this full moon. I feel more people than usual are perhaps consulting healers. And that can be in the medical profession in a traditional sense. It can also be in the spiritual sense. I think for a lot of you with Neptune being in the 8th house, you can be getting some help, some compassion from someone who's maybe an astrologer, or someone who's maybe a psychologist or a psychiatrist or something like that. You may be getting the support and compassion that you need from this person, or the help that you need from this person. With Neptune being there in the 8th house and offering this sort of compassionate, loving energy towards your 6th house. So it might be that for some of you, you're really letting go of some excess baggage that you don't need to carry anymore. The 8th house can be very much about metaphorical baggage that we inherit, and it can be a process of dissolving parts of ourselves that are no longer ours to carry. And this has been a long process for you. Neptune's been in here a long time, but at the crisis degree, you're really thinking, oh wow, I can't carry this anymore. I know my parents carried this, I know their parents carried this, I have to let this down, this has to end with me. And you might find that that's the best thing that you can do for your health, is to let go of something that is not yours to carry, Leo. So I'm going to get you a tarot card and see what comes up for you. So we have the Page of Coins, which is about laying a foundation. This is such a 6th house card. So at the time of this full moon, believe it or not, you might actually have some good news surrounding your work with the Page of Coins. And this could be, if it's not good news, it might just be that you're more prepared to lay a better and more solid foundation for yourself. Pluto conjunctions can be a little bit like a tower moment. So in terms of your habits and the way that you operate daily, you might be letting go of some stuff, but have a really solid idea of what you need to do to make that area of life more successful and get the best results. I also think this card, as it says study of magic with Neptune in the 8th, I think some of you might actually be studying that as part of your work. That's what I have for you, Leo, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Virgo, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Virgo, this is the second of 2 full moons happening in the sign of Capricorn, which means that the Capricorn part of our chart is getting a bit of a boost at this time. It's really needing our attention, and something has to change in this sector because this is at the crisis degree, meaning that the time is now. There's a sense of urgency. Now for you, this is happening in a very romantic part of your chart. It is the 5th house. The 5th house, as we know, is all to do with love and romance and beauty and fun and enjoyment and all the pleasurable things about life. If it's not romantic, this house is also to do with creativity, just generally having fun, and also your children or significant children in your life. So for a lot of you, with this being at the crisis degree, something needs your attention in these areas. So whether or not it is that something needs your attention with one of your children, whether it is that something needs your attention in your love life, this full moon is a time of change, because it is at the final degree of Capricorn. Now Pluto is going to retrograde back over this degree from September to November. So for a lot of you, these might be quite significant months when it comes to significant change in your love life, or significant change to your creativity. If you're an artist, if you work in a creative field, or creation is a big part of who you are as a person. And it can also be to do with your children, as I said as well, if you have children. For some of you, this full moon being conjunct Pluto, being at the crisis degree, some of you may find that if you've been trying for a long time, you're finally pregnant. Or for some of you, this could be when you're giving birth with the 5th house correspondence, but obviously that's only for a select few of you. With the need for transformation here, something has to change in your romantic life. So whether or not that is that with this being a 29-degree full moon and it being very karmic, there's someone significant in your life at this time romantically, or whether or not this is that you need to break a pattern when it comes to your love life. Something does need to change, and this full moon is triggering it. So a lot of people are finding, I'm saying this for all the signs, the full moon is conjunct Pluto. Pluto is incredibly intense in its emotional sense. And that means that a lot of us are feeling quite vulnerable. We're facing parts of ourselves that are shadowy in nature, our fears, the parts of ourselves that we hide away, that we run away from ourselves. And that's where the psyche and the unconscious starts to run the show. And we start to form these patterns that at one point kept us safe. So say, for example, you had your heart really badly broken once and you think, I never want this to happen again. So you shut off from people. This full moon might be a time when you realize, I don't actually want to do that anymore. I don't want to keep pushing people away. That can be for some of you. Say, for example, as well, again, just back to the example, maybe you were hurt by a partner before. You then realize that ever since then, you have been dating the same kind of person over and over and over and over. And you notice this pattern and think, okay, this means something. The full moon is when you finally get the hint that this means something, and you start to investigate. You allow yourself to feel through it and see what this pattern actually is and why it's there. It's a great time for some psychological investigation, Virgo, when it comes to your romantic patterns in particular. But it can be as well for those of you that are in relationships. The concept of romance within that relationship might need to change as well. Say you've become more like roommates than lovers, for example. You're thinking, okay, now this really needs to change because this can't go on. This doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for them. So basically, when it comes to love and romance, it's very intense. And I think a lot of you could be feeling very intensely at the time of this full moon about this issue or about this concept. And for others of you, it can be, as I say, to do with children. If you have them, there can be some sort of significant change going on in the life of a child. I would say, with Pluto being in the mix here, for some of you, this could be children that are going through perhaps changing schools. Pluto rules your sector of education. It can be that they're changing schools. It can be that you're moving and it's affecting them. It can also be that they are maybe dealing with somebody who is Pluto-like in nature, where there is a power struggle. They have a teacher they really fear, or there's someone in school they really fear. So it's a good time under this full moon to really, if you have children, talk to them and see what's going on with them in their life, because they might actually be quite scared of something, or they could be feeling a little bit worried about someone or something, and this full moon might reveal that to you, and you might think this is the time to make some changes. I don't want this pattern to continue for them, or you don't want certain patterns to continue for you. It can also be that your relationship to art in general is highlighted here, so how you create, because creativity is not just painting. You don't have to be Picasso to be an artist. It can come through in whatever profession you do. Creative skills come through in most professions, and it's how you feel about your art, your craft, so to speak. You might be realizing something needs to change, or you could actually be channeling your emotions through your creative project, or this can be a full moon where a song comes around and just hits you in the feels. But I will say, for a lot of you, the sextile to Neptune in your partnership sector, Neptune's a very spiritual planet. So for those of you that have kind of spiritual partners, this could be quite a good time to get their support on an issue. They don't have to be spiritual in a conventional sense. They can be religious or they can be spiritual, but it can actually be the qualities of being quite compassionate and kind. They don't have to be a spiritual person per se. It can be that your partner is really supporting you with what it is that you need to change. Or for a lot of you, if you're dating, this can be a really beautiful healing union for you, because Neptune's very healing. Pluto is very transformative. So maybe for some of you, you're meeting someone at this time, and you're seeing it maybe with Neptune in the 7th as being a little bit more long term. Saturn rules this full moon and it's in your relationship sector, and Saturn's very solid. For a lot of you with this particular transit, you're more interested in relationships that can stand the test of time than ones that are fleeting. So for a lot of you, this could actually be a really beautiful transformation romantically. And for others of you, it can be that if it's not manifesting literally, that you're really understanding the patterns that you need to change and break. It's worth noting though that Neptune in the 7th house isn't just about romantic partners. It can actually be about business partners. So with this particular full moon, it can be that if you're needing to make certain changes, maybe with children in your life, you have a business partner that's helping you through that. Or creatively speaking, you might be collaborating with someone and thinking, this is a dream. Like this works so well. If you're an artist in particular, Virgo. So it really feels like relationships are the name of the game for you, feeling supported by other people, not judged by other people, held by other people, allowing other people to be compassionate with you, and someone else, whether it's romantic or whether it's business or whether it's a best friend, there's somebody there that's willing to hold space for you to work through these things that you need to change, with this being in your 5th house. So this can also be one really good party, but it's an intense party. So I don't know what that would mean, but the 5th house is the house of parties. So if you're going to a party at this time, just know that it could be one for the history books. It could be quite intense. Be careful of taking things to excess though, if you are going to any kind of event, Virgo, because with Pluto in the mix, sometimes those changes aren't necessarily going to go so well if you're not acting in your full awareness or full integrity, Virgo. So just be mindful of that. Let's get you a tarot card. Ooh, so we have the 6 of Swords, which says better times ahead, which is lovely. It says tranquility, overcoming hardship, conflicts resolved, becoming stable, restoration and peace. So I think for a lot of you, you're really making these changes that need to occur from a place of peacefulness and wanting something more tranquil in the months, years that follow. You're really making these changes from a perspective of what would be the most peaceful and harmonious for my life going forward. It can also be just to, take both sides of this. It can be when you are realizing that maybe in certain cases you have been avoidant to keep a sense of calm. And that might be something that you're working through as well. So say you've been avoiding certain people or certain, I guess with the Neptune moon angle, relationships to keep the calm. Or trying to keep the calm in relationships, but not actually making it easier in the long run, and realizing maybe that's something that needs to change as well, Virgo. That is entirely possible as well. The moon, this is a full moon, the moon rules your vision of the future. So I think with this being at the crisis degree, your vision of the future is quite important at this time, and you need to make changes to accommodate it to be what you want it to be. But that's what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Libra, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Libra, this is happening in your 4th house. And this full moon is happening at the crisis degree, the anaretic degree of Capricorn. So this can bring about a sense of urgency. Something needs to change. Something needs to be released. And this for you is to do with your roots and your home, property matters, family matters, but also your upbringing. So for a lot of you, the connection to Pluto here is making me think that maybe you're doing some serious shadow work when it comes to your childhood, when it comes to your ancestry, when it comes to your heritage, doing some significant healing work there, and perhaps noticing some patterns and being more willing to break them, which is quite intense. But this is an intense full moon. It's conjunct Pluto, it's at the crisis degree. It's now or never. You're going to have to face some shadows when it comes to your softest center, really, with this being in the 4th house. It's very soft. So you might be noticing patterns in your family, or you might be noticing what is stemming from childhood. And it's not about blaming anybody. It's not about anything like that. It's more to do with not allowing the stuff that we shoved down, deep down, and don't look at to run the show anymore. You know, the psyche will demand to be heard. So some intense feelings could be coming out. You could feel more intense about your family members. For some of you in particular, the mother. There could be secrets that have come out in the family that are quite a lot to process. There could be some crisis within the family that you're dealing with at this time that's making you feel quite emotionally vulnerable. And it could also be that when it comes to moving, perhaps you're really thinking, okay, I need to move. I need to make changes within the home and the family unit. Something needs to change when it comes to the family. And you may be moving. For some of you, might be selling your old family home. You might be selling a home you've lived in for a very long time, moving somewhere new. And you might be wanting to lay down very new foundations somewhere else. Pluto is in your 5th house, so if it's to do with family, it could very much be to do with children. This is obviously an out of sign conjunction, but Pluto will go back into your 4th house. So there can be some sort of crisis coming up when it comes to home and when it comes to family, or it can be that you're needing to make significant changes in this area, Libra. You could be moving, literally moving, or you could be, you know, your parents could be selling the home that you grew up in or something like that. Or you could be considering making a pretty big move, or there could be a big reveal in your family. Now, there is a lovely sextile to this full moon from Neptune. Neptune is in your 6th house. This full moon is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in your 6th house. So one thing I will say, the reflection that you're doing on your career is quite significant at this time. With Neptune being in a sextile here, you might be finding with whatever's going on in the home and family that you have some support maybe from the people you work with, or it may be that you're getting some support from having a more spiritual routine. With Neptune being in the 6th house, and spiritual routines can simply just be meditation, you know, listening to that app, what's it called, Headspace or something like that. Just making a daily practice to help you cope with the changes and the intense emotions that are coming up. Having some sort of, 5 minutes in a day, some sort of practice that helps you calm yourself or helps you work through some stuff. Libra would be beneficial to you. You might be supported by people that you work with. You might be supported by employees or co-workers. At this time, you might be finding that they're giving you a sense of support. However, as I said, the fact this full moon is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn is in your 6th house, when it comes to work and the work that you do, there is a period of review, and there may also be a period of consequence if things have not been up to scratch or up to shape with Saturn going through the 6th house. If you've not been taking care of your health either, this can be a full moon when you're thinking, okay, I really need to make a change there too. I really need to make some significant shifts in order to have better health, long-term health, or in order to do better at work. That kind of thing can be coming up as well, because of course when we have a full moon in the 4th house, the sun is in the 10th house, which means that a light is being shone on our professional life as well. So with this woman being ruled by a professional house and the sun being in a professional house, just pay attention as much as there are changes with family, what changes need to occur with your career as well, what needs to change there, Libra. So let's get you a tarot card for this full moon and see what's coming up as well. Too many just fell out. Well, do you know what? I'm just going to take them. So we have the 7 of Swords, the Death card, and the King of Pentacles. I think for a lot of you, there is something... Do you know what? A secret very well may come out for you, Libra, under this full moon. Maybe from an earth sign, or maybe from someone you work with, or to do with your work life. Something might be revealed that brings great change that can't be undone. A lot of the time with Pluto, the change can't be undone. So you might be noticing some significant change occurring in your life around this time, or a secret coming out about somebody. As I say, it can be an earth sign, it doesn't have to be, but I think it could be linked to family matters or career matters. It seems to be linked to one of the two, your household or your professional life, but something may change completely based on knowledge that you come into that you're not aware of. It's worth noting as well that Mercury is squaring Uranus at the time of this full moon, so something significant or surprising can come up in conversation. That's what I have for you, Libra, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Scorpio, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Scorpio, this full moon is going to be conjunct your modern ruler Pluto. And the full moon and Pluto are in different signs. The full moon's happening in the final degree of Capricorn. Pluto is happening within the first degree of Aquarius. So your third house and your fourth house are impacting each other here. And I think with the fact that the full moon is in your third house and it is conjunct Pluto, Pluto being your modern ruler, with this full moon, this can manifest in a few different ways. One of the ways I want to mention is that it might be manifesting as someone sharing a secret with you that is quite intense. This could be someone in your family. This could be a female. This could be someone who feels like family. This could even be a friend because it's the third house. It could be a sibling too. Someone may be sharing quite a significant secret with you, and it could be heavy with Pluto being in the mix. It could also be that you have something powerful that you need to say at the time of this full moon as well. Something that you need to communicate or something that you need to share. Perhaps you're sharing a secret. Wouldn't be like you, but perhaps you are. This is also a chance where I think for a lot of you, because it's conjunct your ruler, I think a lot of you are realizing the power of your communication, the way that you communicate, what you say to others, how you respond to others. And I think a lot of you really want to take your power back when it comes to how you communicate. And in another sense, because Pluto is such a psychological, transformative planet, it's really representing how much when we change ourselves from the inside, it changes the outside. And how profound that change can be and how impactful it can be. I think a lot of you could be doing some shadow work surrounding communication, surrounding your feelings of being heard, of feeling like you have a voice, of feeling like you can share your opinion, of feeling like you can speak up when you need to. And your feelings around that, or any traumas that you have around that, or patterns around that, I think you're willing to break. I think you might also be willing to break perhaps your relationship to information and the information that you're taking in, maybe by the news or the media or social media. You might actually be going through a detox, or you might be making a complete break to those type of outlets. Scorpio might be getting your information from other places. This can also be that there's some sort of crisis or need for change when it comes to your relationship with a sibling, or when it comes to your relationship with a friend or a neighbor. There could be something quite heavy happening in your neighborhood, or something significant happening with a neighbor of yours. With Pluto in the mix, it may be that someone is leaving your neighborhood. Maybe you have a neighbor that you know is in the final stages of their life and they pass on around this full moon. But it can also be that for some of you, this is actually that it's a car or a vehicle that you're letting go of as well, because it's maybe had its day, with this being at the final degree in the third house. Or you're changing up your commute. Maybe some of you are deciding you don't want to drive a car, you want to ride a bicycle instead. That could be a significant change as well, Scorpio. This might also be a time when you're wanting to put your writing out there. And I think if you are, because this is the third house and it's conjunct Pluto, I think if you are putting your writing out there, you may very well find that it is very raw, very vulnerable, and very exposed. You might be willing to share more than you usually would, and you might have a bit of a sharing hangover, I think it's called, the sharing hangover, but you're really putting your vulnerable self out there. If you do put your vulnerable self out there, Scorpio, with your words, it's wonderful, because you're moving past some sort of mask you've put on, or some sort of defensive coping mechanism you've built to protect yourself from something that doesn't make sense for this version of you anymore. This version of you that is maybe, really working through some stuff and doesn't want to react the same way as you always have done, or doesn't want to respond the same way you always have, especially when it comes to communication or sharing your thoughts or feelings. Now, this full moon is making a really nice aspect to Neptune in your fifth house. So because of the writing side of the third house, I think for a lot of you, journaling, songwriting, so I'm a Scorpio sun. The other night started songwriting again for the first time in a long time, and it felt great. So you might be finding that you're wanting to express yourself creatively through your words, whether that's a song, a poem, whether that is, any kind of expression through the arts, creative expression through the arts that says something. You know, you can say something through many different mediums, but you might be wanting to express yourself verbally more than anything else, or through the written word, or through languages, Scorpio. It can also be that perhaps with Neptune being a very compassionate energy, maybe a romantic interest is helping you share your thoughts or your experiences, or say, for example, you're dating someone, they're helping you, maybe just by their presence, maybe they don't have to be doing anything specifically, but they're helping you express what you need to express, or say the thing that you find hard to say, or bring up the thing that you find hard to bring up. It might be a very healing process for you in terms of communicating with another person. If you are going to an event, be careful of drinking too much or relying too heavily on a substance, with Neptune being at the 29th degree of Pisces in your 5th house of fun. Too much of anything can make you sick with Neptune at 29 degrees in the 5th house. So just be mindful of that. Scorpio, in terms of taking things to excess. The ruler of this full moon, Saturn, is also in your 5th house in retrograde. Sometimes I've read a couple of people mention that when Saturn is retrograde in the 5th house, a lot of the time you can reconnect with old romantic partners. That can be the case for you, but it can also be just as likely, if not more so, that you're reflecting on patterns of relationships and what it is that you need to rectify, maybe on your end, you know, your own karma or their karma, and you're perhaps able under this full moon to send a message or write it all down and not send the message, you know, write a letter and then burn it, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be actual communication. But with Mercury square Uranus, there can be surprising conversations going on in the mix. And Uranus is in your relationship sector, so it very, very well may be that you hear from someone you didn't expect to hear from, or someone hears from you when they didn't expect to hear from you, Scorpio. And that doesn't have to be romantic, by the way. So Scorpio, let's get you a card for this full moon and see what comes up. So we have the 10 of Wands, heavy load. So a lot of you are maybe feeling quite overburdened with Pluto being your modern ruler and going in and out like a burger of Capricorn and Aquarius. You might be feeling really overwhelmed by, okay, am I changing my home? Am I doing shadow work on my family? Am I transforming this? Or am I actually changing the way that I communicate? Am I going to need to study something new? You're kind of going back and forth between, you know, where your focus is, what it is that you should be changing the most of. And I think for a lot of you, Scorpio, it's simply about getting some stuff off your chest at the time of this full moon and letting some stuff out. In a healthy way, of course, but letting some stuff out. That is what I have for you, and I'll talk to you soon. Hi Sagittarius, welcome to the full moon in Capricorn for your sign. So Sagittarius, this full moon is the second of two full moons in your financial sector, and this one is at the anaretic degree, the crisis degree, and it's conjunct Pluto. So this is a big hitter. And Pluto tends to bring intense transformation and profound change. So one of the ways that this can happen in someone's financial sector is that someone could be, for example, quite loose with their money. They might spend their money on random things, and by the end of the month they have nothing to show for it because of their own spending. Sometimes that's just to do with situations, but I mean in terms of a person's financial relationship. Say you get somebody who is quite careless with their money, and they get to the end of the month and they don't have anything left. And then, for example, this person then finds out that they're expecting a baby, and all of a sudden their priorities shift. It changes and their financial relationship changes, and they think, okay, well, I'm not going to spend so recklessly anymore because I have to put my money towards this. I'm not saying that's going to happen, you Sagittarius, but I'm just saying this is an example of how someone's priorities financially can change, and the things that they're spending money on change quite quickly. So for a lot of you, with this being at the crisis degree, you may change your relationship to your spending if your actual salary or income is not changing at this time, which for a lot of you it very well may be. Your salary could be changing quite a bit, and your financial situation could be changing quite a bit as well. But this can be that your relationship to your spending and your money is changing too. And this could be because of some work that you're doing psychologically. The case for most people at the time of this full moon is that there's some shadowy component. They're doing some sort of shadow work, and you may be noticing patterns in terms of how you spend your money. Say, for example, because I know a lot of people that have this relationship to online shopping, when they're sad or they're kind of going through it or they're feeling lonely, they order themselves something to cheer them up. And if you're going through a very long period of feeling that way, this can really add up quite significantly. So you might be noticing a pattern of spending when you're feeling emotional, or it can be the opposite. It can be that you're scared to spend money and you have, trauma from childhood, from a time when you didn't have money. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist, I'm just giving examples. But it can be a case where you're really reflecting on these different types of ways your experiences shape your spending or your financial habits. That can be something that's coming up with a full moon conjunct Pluto in the second house. Of course, as I say, it can also be that your financial situation is changing. Maybe you're coming into more money salary-wise because of promotion. Maybe some of you are actually cutting off a particular source of income at this time as well. But it feels like your financial situation is changing, either because of external circumstances or because of the inner work that you're doing. Sagittarius. Now, I do think for a lot of you, you could be spending quite a significant amount of money on the home or to do with family, because there is a sextile to Neptune in your fourth house of home and family. So you might be financially linked to a property at this time. Maybe you're spending a lot on a home. You're buying a home, you're getting a new home, you're maybe spending money on something financially to do with the family, or maybe there is some sort of financial change in your family that is affecting you. But the ruler of this full moon being Saturn retrograde in your fourth house, there could be some sort of reflection you're doing when it comes to family and how that affects your finances or how that affects your values. When Saturn is retrograde, it can be going backwards. So you may be reconnecting with family and perhaps noticing certain patterns playing out financially, or even in terms of confidence. You might observe in your family how people deal with self-confidence, self-belief, courage, self-esteem. Those type of patterns can be apparent to you at the time of this full moon. But there could be significant, there can be significant urgency and change and crisis going on in your family sector as well, with Neptune being there. And there may be, in some cases, this need to support each other. Maybe you're having to support someone in your family who's going through a crisis at this time, with Neptune being in the fourth, and maybe you have the means to do so, Sagittarius. But as I say, it can also be that you're spending money on a new home, or you're finding that a lot of your money is going into the home, and there does seem to be a recognition of patterns going on more than anything else. I do think it's interesting that this full moon has an out of sign trine to Mars recently entering your seventh house of relationships. Kind of feels like there might be someone there, someone to bolster you up. It could be a partner, or it could be a best friend or a business partner, but someone who's kind of ready to fight your corner, I think. At the full moon, whatever is going on for you at this time, Sagittarius, someone might be there to give you the words that you need if you're struggling to find them. With this full moon, it can also be a really good time to do some shadow work when it comes to self-confidence and self-belief and self-worth. With this being conjunct Pluto, Pluto is of course in your third house, and Pluto will retrograde back into your second. So Pluto being in your third house means that you're changing fundamentally the way that you communicate. And sometimes Pluto in the third can be addressing fears of voicing your opinion or saying something. But with Mars being in an out of sign trine, I think someone might be there to help you find the words that you need to say if you have something to say at this time, Sagittarius. So there does seem to be financial changes going on for you at the time of this full moon. So let's get a card for Sagittarius. We have the Five of Swords, which is all about shifting the energy. So this is about conquering self-doubt, which is very on point for the full moon being conjunct Pluto in your second house. I think a lot of you are figuring out how to change your relationship to your self-belief, conquering self-doubt, maybe making some changes in order to shift the energy around, maybe making some financial changes. maybe doing something differently. And I think for a lot of you with the sextile to Neptune in the fourth, you may be making amends with someone in your family as well, possibly for some of you. You could be forgiving someone, someone could be forgiving you, or you could be releasing the baggage between the pair of you, or multiple of you if that is the case as well. Sagittarius, that's what I have for you. Talk to you soon.